Shalom, everybody. Rabbi Edelstein here with what can't really even be called an edition or an episode of Rabbi Ian 3 or Rabbi Ian 3D. It's really just a brief blessing and wish to you from my heart that you should have a wonderful, beautiful, meaningful, joyous Sukkot, Chag Sameach. I'm in my Sukkah, or I should say our family Sukkah right here in Silver Spring. It's such a beautiful holiday. You can see, of course, the roof. That's called Chag, the thin roof that really is the defining feature of the Sukkah more than anything else, which really makes it a temporary dwelling. The walls can be very strong. But in any case, it's a beautiful, joyous holiday, and there's not time now to go into all of the depth, but I just want to say that like every Jewish holiday, it's not just one idea, right? Many people will say, oh, Sukkot, that's a harvest festival, isn't it? Yes, it's true. Something we're not as connected to nowadays, of course, but yes, it is part of the agricultural cycle, like all the three Chagim, or the Regalim, I should say, the festivals. So there is a connection and a certain aspect of joy, simcha, that comes from the harvest. You know, the summer crops you bring in, hopefully it was a bountiful, fruitful crop, and lots of good wine in the making or to be made, right? And of course, in earlier times, that was a great source of simcha, joy inherently as part of the season. But Sukkot was never only about that. There's always also a historical, or an historical, I should say, and a spiritual component to every Jewish holiday. What's the historical connection of Sukkot? We know Pesach was when God took the Jewish people out of Egypt. Shavuot is when God gave us the Torah and spoke the Ten Commandments in a public assembly at Mount Sinai. What Sukkot correspond to? Well, the Torah says, you shall dwell in Sukkot, these temporary dwellings, for 7 days, and dwell means as much as possible. Eat, sleep if possible, learn Torah, certainly pray, don't say bad things in here. We bring all of our life out into the Sukkah, and therefore everything is elevated and sanctified, because the Sukkah is truly a holy spot and place. But in any case, the Torah says you'll dwell in temporary residences, Sukkot, so that you shall remember for all your generations that I made you or caused you to dwell. I, Hashem, caused you to dwell in Sukkot when I brought you out of Egypt. So Sukkot is connected to the whole time God protected us and led us in the Midbar, in the desert. And the Sukkot that the verse says we should hearken back to, and by the way, the great rabbis say when we're sitting in our Sukkah, or any Sukkah, you should call to mind that remembrance in your spiritual memory bank, our memory bank, that God protected us in the Midbar, in the desert, for 40 years after we left Egypt. So anyway, Sukkot, literally, the Jewish people dwelled in, temporary huts or, tents, as it were, when we were encamped in the desert. But Rashi, the great commentator, brings an ancient teaching that the Sukkot that we sit in now are also a remembrance of the quote-unquote large sukkah that surrounded us when we traveled in the desert. What do I mean? The anane kavod, clouds of glory on every side that protected us, that were air conditioning, and that paved the way and charted our path in the desert. Yes, we were in a bubble of protection as we traveled in the Midbar. Not that it was easy all the time, but it was not in 140-degree weather and sweating. No, we were surrounded on all sides by anane kavod, clouds of glory. So when we sit in the sukkah, we think about Hashem taking us out. Our family units were in little huts like this. They probably didn't have the same posters I have here, or probably not the electric lights. I doubt that. But in any case, we're also supposed to call to mind the clouds of glory that surrounded us in the desert. And great rabbis have said we should try to connect to the idea of Hashem embracing us on Sukkot. The Sukkah is what we're being embraced by Hashem. Is it as open as it was in the desert? Perhaps not. But the Hashgacha Pratis, God's divine providence, leads us, guides us as individuals and as a Jewish people, as we have wandered throughout the desert of the nations, as it were. God's providence and protection didn't stop in the desert. It's with us all the time. That's one of the beautiful lessons of Sukkot. And that's one of the reasons, another layer of why it's joyous. Not just the harvest festival aspect, but the joy of bitachon, true trust in God's protection. I say those words, they roll off my tongue. I'm not on the level, frankly, where I can say I live that 100%, but I know that that's what we all should strive to to live as Jews, to have that clear, pure bitachon, trust in God. True trust in God leads to simcha, joy. Absolutely. How can you be joyous if you're insecure? And to truly have emunah, faith, and bitachon, trust, which is faith kind of put into practice, that really leads to simcha, to joy in life, something for all of us to shoot for. And then finally, another layer of joy. Oh yeah, when does this holiday come in the Jewish calendar? 5 days after Yom Kippur, we are purified. We are fresh as new babes, right? We might not have yet the trust in Hashem that a child has in its mother or its parents, but we certainly have the purity after a meaningful fast and Yom Kippur. So again, joy from harvest, the fruitfulness of the fertility of the land of Israel, and the beautiful walk into a Whole Foods and you can feel the joy at the fertility of this world. And we celebrate on Sukkot with 4 species that represent many things, but including the fertility of the land. That's one joyous aspect. Hashem's protection of us in the past and in the present is another aspect of joy. And a third aspect of joy is the purification of Yom Kippur. And so we go into the Sukkah, everything is sanctified and elevated in the Sukkah. The air of the Sukkah, they say, is like the air of the land of Israel, or like the air of the temple, the Beit HaMikdash. It's holy. You can be sure of that. I took too long, which, I have that bad habit of doing that, right? Forgive me, please. I revert to old mistakes even right after Yom Kippur. Have a wonderful, beautiful Chag Sameach. I hope to check in during the week and really try to get to a Sukkah if you're on campus or a Sukkot there. If you want to come, hey, contact me privately, private message me, and we'll, maybe we can have pizza up here in Silver Spring. Don't just show up, just contact me, okay? But have a wonderful, incredible Sukkot. And even if you're not in a Sukkah, there's still holy, special days of joy, of connecting to your bitachon, strengthening your bitachon, your trust in God. Thank you so much for listening, and have a holy, happy week. Talk to you later.